Hello, everyone. How do you like the view here in my car? And how do you like hanging out with these guys that I'm hanging out
Hey
with?
everyone, Guillermo Salazar here. Good to see you all. It's great.
Good to see you all. Can you guys pull on your phones like the LinkedIn app?
Yep.
This way we can see if there's any comments. I
do
want to
it.
make sure that we're not missing out on comments.
Yep.
Well, super pumped to have you all here with us on a journey. This was something that we decided in a spur of the moment. So I'm gonna start with this. Guillermo, I'm gonna start by asking you, what made you fly from Canada to Atlanta to spend 7 hours in a car with me and Chris? It's gotta be a very solid reason, or maybe it isn't. But I really want you to share, right? Because this is not nothing.
I appreciate that. That's a good intro. Thanks for the setup. Well, I wanted to travel more and longer. I wanted to do more. I think that ultimately we're going to NNA right now. I'll see you for a heartbeat now and then, right? And we're coming into the slower months in terms of the connection. I value every single minute of conversation I've had with both of you two, and I get a chance to learn for the next 6 hours, and that's going to be pretty powerful for me. So I'll say selfishly, I get a chance to listen and learn, have engaging conversations, because there are things that I might believe that just simply aren't true, and we get to talk through that and tear those ideas apart. And there is nothing better than a road trip to have that conversation, because there's something before us that we have to pay attention to. And the conversation of the three of us has always been valuable to me. So I'll say that's worth the trip, and that's worth the trip.
So, Chris, I want to turn it over to you.
Yep.
Why did you decide to hop on?
So I was going to have a nice, wonderful, first class trip on Southwest Airlines this afternoon, and hang out at the airport lounge, carry my bags around. But I decided to come with you guys because I was like, number one, we could talk about NAA in prep of. Number two, relevant topics on the industry. Number three, enjoy some food as we drive through Alabama down to Nolens. And number four, get to hell yes. I believe in the power of saying yes if. And I said, if I'm going to be able to spend time with y'all, get some work done in the back, not have to lug my bags through an airport, that's a big win. So I'm really pumped about NAA this week. I think for a few things, talking with you guys specifically on areas I'm getting very curious about, I think are becoming more important. They're going to be the labor issues, maintenance. I think managing your relationships with your vendors and your suppliers and your partners, huge topic. I think AI can help a lot, but I'm really excited to dive in with you guys. I think you two are two of the most knowledgeable people I know on the subject.
Well, now my turn. I'm gonna ask myself the same question and answer right after that. So this idea kind of like stemmed in my mind. For me, 10-hour drives are pretty regular. I have a couple of properties I'm visiting, at least once a quarter, and I go there by myself. So I was just thinking, what if I had a couple of my best friends riding with me for 7 hours to New Orleans, right? Instead flying. We're on a plane all the time, like Chris said. Sometimes we have good seats, and that's amazing, right? But then I think at the end of the day, when it's all said and done for us all, what we will be remembering is not gonna be how many miles we got on a plane, how many first class trips, and how many contacts we have collected at various conferences. Is gonna be what is the stuff that stays with me, and I think it's the answer is the stories, right? The stories that we build in this journey for life. We have limited opportunities to create those stories, and it's only up to us to making it happen. For me, there's nothing more exciting and also touching than my friend flying from Canada just to spend 7 hours in a car. It's an absolutely incredible thing, and also kind of Unbelievable, right? Who does that? The answer is
red eye, by the way.
yeah, yeah, and the answer is a true friend. The answer is very clear to me. A true friend will do that, to be with you, to spend some time with you, and to enjoy each other's company and have amazing conversations. I want to get into the first topic for that I want to touch on today. Conferences. I think right here in this little car we have about 100 plus conferences a year between the three of us that we do together combined. So we see a lot of people, we see a lot of conferences. We see the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I think for those that don't have the opportunity to travel as much as we do, and some that I might be watching right now that it's their very first or second conference, right? A conference like Apartmentalize could be very overwhelming. And honestly, to just say the truth, for us at times it is too. Be there and trying to think how can I make the most of my time when I'm looking at a sea, at an ocean of like 12, 13,000 people, and then a trade show floor that even if I just like completely walk back and forth, probably it's gonna take the whole entire time that the trade show floor is open. So, Guillermo, I want to start with you. What are some things that you learn that you think that are very valuable for someone to make to consider when they're going to conferences? What are some things that you've learned, and that you could help others maybe with their conference experience?
I think for it to be valuable for yourself, there's got to be something you come out of it. And if you go out there waiting for everyone to tell you what's important to you, you're gonna not really come out with anything that you can kind of take away from. So I would say the first thing you got to do on your way down, take 5 minutes, grab the back of that vomit bag in the plane, and write on it 3 things. What are the top 3 things? What are the top 3 problems that I'm trying to solve? And then what are 3 questions that have to relate to those problems? The question should be, what is the problem? Why is it unavoidable? What are my list of options as I understand it? And maybe why are those options not so great? The limitations of those options. Write that out for the problems you're trying to solve. Because then when you go talk to the vendors or you talk to the people or you talk to everyone else out there, you've got a frame of mind of what your objective is for the conference. If you go to the conference without an objective, the conference is going to force an objective on you and you're going to feel kind of overwhelmed. But if you're actually out there trying to mine an answer amongst all the talk, you will have a very valuable conference. So my first tip is make sure that you are intentional about what you're going to learn, and it better be problem centered. If you're going out there to just go, I'm going to go learn about AI, you're going to learn about AI, but you're going to have no frame of reference as to how that's going to affect your career goals, maybe your site goals, or your corporate goals. And those 3 things, what matters to you, is ultimately what you're trying to solve for by being at this conference.
Chris, your turn now. Same question.
Oh, sorry. I'm making sure you saw that, please. Sorry, go ahead. I was just actually messaging with the audience for questions.
Awesome.
Okay,
Yeah. So the question, Chris, is what are some pieces of very practical advice that you have for some that don't have the opportunity like we do to travel so much all the time to conferences? What are some tips?
A couple of things. I think number one is be clear about what you're looking for, what you need, where you're having challenges, but also what you're good at. So I think for me, that's specifically the areas I know the best are hardware. I would say operational technology, then space I'm really interested in is obviously the marketing space. I think the lead to lease and all the way through to transitioning to your next property, your next home is key. That's software. I think marketing is, for a lot of the marketing experts, where are they having issues? I think a lot of people are saying they're using AI and don't believe what you see a lot of times. Many people are confused. People aren't sure. And here's the thing, AI is changing not every year, not every 6 months, not every quarter like technology used to change. It's now changing every single week. You're seeing updates happen. I think it was Fable 4.8 went to Fable 5, which got banned by the government. And so now you had all these people who are upgrading their technologies and systems to the newest version, and then overnight their systems don't work. So it's really key, I think, for a lot of people to be prepared for. That's why I say in tech, a lot of times you have to try different things. You have to have conversations. Adrian, I think one of the biggest mistakes I see, this is probably the number one takeaway I see hands down in this industry or in any industry, is that people say they discount or not the opportunity of people solving their problem for them. So the perfect example is if someone's having a problem with space, let's say they're having a problem with labor and contracting, and they say, "Oh man, do you know anyone who does this? I haven't been able to find somebody." And of course, you probably know 6 people doing it. You probably know 4 people doing it. And I know 2 people doing it. Oh yeah, they go. I say, "What about company A?" And they say, "I met with them. They don't do that. I talked with them." I go, "When did you talk to them?" They said, 6 months ago. Oh yeah, I just talked to them. They've been doing it for a little while. They have like 6 products, so it's hard to tell which one's company B. They'll say, "No, company B doesn't do that." Yeah, I'm pretty sure they don't. I'm like, when did you meet with them? About a year and a half ago. Oh no, they definitely have started doing it in the last 3 months. So I think that's the biggest, scariest thing is how most buyers of technology are not connected to the people actually selling or solving the problems. There's a big disconnect on the marketing of what people actually do and what they actually solve for, like on their websites and their marketing. So I think that's what people who are not at these events. That's the hard part. Even if you're at the event, right? There's 700 booths. There's probably 3,000 suppliers and technology companies here. You can't meet with all those. You can't even meet with. You're lucky if you meet with 40, 30, right? So let's be real. You're going to be maybe 1 or 2 in a certain sector. So relying on your network, asking others for help, that's the key thing. And then putting it out on social media, right? I put things out. I'm going to put something out right now on LinkedIn for us, and ask people for advice or for a tip for NAA. And so the more you ask, the more closed mouths don't get fed. It's a great comment I heard from John Birdsong at ATV.
So to cut you off right here, I'm thinking this is like a cabbage, right? You deliver the cabbage, right? How do we peel this so get to the heart of it? And I think uh, uh the first thing to unpack here, Chris, is you mentioned that there's a significant marketing messaging issue. I don't disagree with you. I also think that there's a situation to where the buyers are acting very insular, right? They're counting on just their like internal resources without necessarily like reaching out and saying, "Hey, who else in my network might help us?" We're back. We're back. Sorry, all. It's one of the pleasures of driving through countryside Alabama and relying on your Verizon signal. Sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. But that's the gamble we're willing to take, right? Just because we think it's very important to us all to kind of share with you, some thoughts, our thoughts, and our experiences. So I hope this minor technical issue doesn't deter you from continuing to follow in the conversation. So I was saying that just a week ago, I spent an hour on the phone with a young man, sales professional that was recommended. I was recommended to him by one of the well-known industry names, executive names. Said, "Hey, you should connect with Adrian." And he asked me a lot of questions about multifamily. He has experience, extensive in sales, but zero multifamily experience. And I had no problem actually. I felt honored that he reached out to me, and then he decided to spend an hour of his time asking questions and learning. And he actually asked me if I would be interested in mentoring him. So this is the type of industry that we are, right? We stick together. We're in so many respects like a great group of friends, maybe family, right? We're very close to each other. Why not just pull in all the resources? Now, Chris, I want to ask you a question here.
Yep.
What are the vendors, the service providers missing out? Like marketing in general, I agree with you, right? There has to be like a better job done at marketing, but what are some practical things that they could do to help the buyers, to help the property management companies make the right decisions for their company when it comes to buying, purchasing technology? What are some things that they're missing out on and they should be doing?
And number one thing I see that people are doing wrong is they're not asking about, number one, like, what have you done before? Most people think they haven't seen it or nobody's doing it like we are. I don't care if your competition is Excel or a piece of paper or an iPhone camera. It doesn't matter. They have in their head that they believe they figured something out. Now, if they haven't, that's great. They'll be open and honest, but you gotta, I think the qualification, too many people are trying to sell before they qualify. And number two, I was guilty of this for years, Adrian, was I was always thinking about what are the questions they're gonna ask. That's great to be prepared. But too often times people are trying to answer the question before they even asked it. And they're not actually trying to learn what the person's process is or steps or issues. So I think a lot, and I just wrote an email last night to someone.
I want to, before, but please hold your thoughts, because this is very important. I want to ask you, what changed for you? How did you transform? What made you transform? Was there a moment, what was it that made you change your mind and changing the way you were approaching this? The wrong way.
Yeah, so I think a couple things. I'm actually going to pull up right now. I was typing an email, and I gave myself, sometimes I type an email, I give myself 24 hours to think on it to make sure it's actually the right email I want to send. So that, I think sometimes it's easy to be moving fast, rapid, get to the point, but sometimes that getting to the point is actually a detriment to, I learned, figuring out and listening. Like Mark Cuban, when he opens his notebook, when he's on a Shark Tank, he says the one where any meeting is in, he says he writes the word listen at the top. And if you're not listening more than you're talking, that's a major problem. So I used to talk too much. If you can imagine, I actually talk less now than I once did. But I think a good goal in a call, sometimes you are the person who should be talking more. People expect you to talk more. And so you might be talking 60 to 70% if that's the expectation of both sides. But sometimes in a call, you should be talking 10, 15, 20, 25%. You should be really learning about the other person, understanding, and then giving it up to the person who, you're not always giving it up to the person who is, that I learned, Adrian, is to the person who knows. You're actually giving it up to the person who doesn't know. To allow them to ask, to allow them to go through the challenges. And I this email I'm talking about right now is really asking questions. I'm going to look at these specific questions is do you know what your outcomes that you want to have? Do you know what success is going to look like in a month, 2 months, 3 months? You know, if we're 4 months out, what questions are you going to be asking about success and failure? And then when you're making this decision, you know, there's always the famous saying, I think Jeff Bezos said at Amazon. He said, there's speed, there's quality, and there's service. You can't have all three, but you can have two. And pretty much, you know, they picked at Amazon service and speed. You don't always get quality, but you get service and speed. I just ordered some stuff and it was hilarious. I got it fast. I got great service and responsiveness, but it was hilarious. The boxes got delivered at different places in my property. One got just thrown on the camera, literally thrown from the car because it was raining. And so because I didn't see it on my front porch when I opened the door, it got soaked because it was over in my driveway about 50 feet away, right? 75 feet away. And so a good example of the relationships in buying process and like how people can buy more, like the eye-opening thing for me was pointing out is the number one thing I do now with anyone is I don't try to sell anybody anything. We're looking at a deal, whether it's a property worth $60 million, whether it's a startup that isn't even worth $2 million, but looking for a check, to technology companies and to properties management. I always look at what's going to go wrong. Everyone loves to present and pitch what's going to go right, how they solve the day, how they do the NOI, how they save me money, how they save me hours, how they're the best company I've ever seen in my life, and no one's like them. But for some reason, everyone wants to cover up or not touch on when something's going to go wrong. What the hell is going to happen? Are you going to respond? Do you answer text messages? Do you have a team behind you? How are you going to make it right? Do you have a guarantee? So at Luxor, we had a guarantee. We had an uptime guarantee. Many of the companies I've been a part of, we had a guarantee. And I think the biggest thing I learned, Adrian, is that what is my guarantee? I have a personal guarantee with me. I just guarantee that they're going to love it. Like when I'm speaking on stage, I'm like, I'll usually say, hey, if you didn't learn something from this that was helpful, let me know. And we'll go to my favorite restaurant in Atlanta, or we'll go to your favorite restaurant in your town. I'm buying lunch and dinner. So I think creating the idea, you don't always have to have a money back guarantee, but it can be some kind of guarantee where you make it right. You focus on having the outcome that you stated. So, I think having clear intentional outcomes, clear expectations from both sides. And then the other biggest thing I learned, Adrian, this is God, I wish I knew this 15 years earlier. I had these when I was a kid. But your parents are like, no, we're not going to have the ice cream now. We're going to have the broccoli. We're going to have the hard conversations. We're going to do the hard things. No, you don't get X now. You don't get the money. You don't get the allowance. You got to go work outside for an hour. And I think the greatest thing I learned, Adrian, from Andrew Huberman, who has a podcast with millions who subscribe. And he talks about health and wellness, but he came to Atlanta, and we got to meet him at a little session with Casey Neistat. And Andrew shared, he said, it was pretty amazing. He said, I wish more disappointment on kids today. The worst thing he believes that can happen to someone is that they actually have massive success first. Because then what will come is disappointment and issues. And when it comes in that order of success, then disappointment, you're just setting yourself up for failure, potential emotional issues, and other problems we won't go into. But specifically, when you have disappointment and you're building and it's not going well, you keep iterating, you test, you know the process, you know how to get through it. And when you become successful, you are much more humble. You're like look at Sarah Blakely in Spanx, right? The pictures of her going in the stores, no one would give her money, didn't believe in it. People told her she was nuts. And now she's a billionaire and incredibly successful. But who was there when she was having the toughest time? I always think about that as who's there. Like I remember people telling us in Luxor 15, 16 years ago, awesome idea, but they weren't buyers. They wouldn't buy it and they wouldn't help. And the same thing, with all types of businesses. So I think the greatest thing is being open, being intentional, and then find your early adopters. I think something else we should go deep on, too, guys, is the topic of free pilots versus paid pilots. I used to think free pilots were the way to go, and I've actually realized that they're oftentimes a disaster. And even when I get a freemium, it's hilarious because I get a free 15 days, no questions asked, no credit card, whatever. So I put in my email, go in, don't have the time. Wow, this is free, okay. And then what happens is 30 days later, 60 days later, I get a note saying, hey, your free version's about to expire. Do you want to upgrade to $30, $500, $1,000 a month? And I go, I never even used this. I didn't even do it. The person didn't get the credit for it. So I'm like, you gotta have buy-in on both sides. I've learned if someone's not gonna have buy-in, if they really aren't eager to make the change, are they really gonna be successful with this? Are you gonna be happy with it? So those are things that I think are important.
Before going to Guillermo, I'll ask the same questions I asked you. I wanted to say that a free trial is not actually free. Because especially in multifamily operations, right? When you say that we're gonna do like a free pilot for you, it's not free. Because if I'm an operator, I want to use my people's time to like test the thing to see what works, what doesn't work. It's actually not, and with no guaranteed results, right? And then secondly, if I'm the PropTech company or the company that offers the free trial, if you offer something for free, how do you expect for the prospect to actually value what you have built? If you're willing to just give it away for free, right? Do you really expect that they will appreciate later on if your first offer is free? even if it's for a limited period of time, right? So I think those are the my thoughts here, Chris. And then Guillermo, I want to switch to you and back to the questions that I asked, that I asked Chris regarding what he mentioned. The lack of like great marketing when it comes to products and education. What are the things that you yourself see on the operator side, both and on the prop tech side? What are the misses, right? That both sides are missing, and also I want to give you the opportunity to actually mention, and you could call them out, right? Some things, some initiatives that you see that are actually going well, right? Right. You've seen or you've heard that they're going well.
All right, so first one, marketing. Marketing misses?
Yeah, marketing misses, and also what are the operators missing? Because it's not, I don't think like that here is more just like a unique, like a one-sided situation. I think operators might have some opportunities to do things differently as well. I'm curious to hear what are those.
So this is going to sound a lot like what Chris said, but I'll frame it in this way. Like, as marketing, we should be thinking about questions, not answers. And you can even go as far as making the headline of your slides questions instead of statements. Because you're going to prompt a conversation and a dialogue that can be way more valuable than if you're talking versus listening. It goes back to the listening thing. So on a marketing side of things, what we're missing on the boat is we talk about our product and our features. And that is like, it's so, and I've done this for years. You talk about the brilliant idea that you've got that matches with a market, that you have a hypothesis that fits a market, and then ultimately you are wrong. But no one does me tell you that you're wrong. Very few people will tell you, very few people care enough to tell you that you're wrong. Ken Doble's a great guy. He cares enough. And just shout out to Ken. But like the folks that will listen to your pitch, nod their head, go, that's groundbreaking, that is going to change our life, let me go see what I can do internally. They're the ones that are going to be often dragging out that sales cycle, and you're going to believe things that just aren't need to be true. So from marketing side of things, it goes without saying, lead with, there's a guy named Andy Bounds, and he talks about the afters. Lead with, and I think this is a bit what Chris is saying, lead with the afters. What am I going to get? What am I buying here? What outcome am I buying? And if the outcome, in our case, it's 40% less open work orders, lead with that. But don't, like, on your website and on your promotional materials, when you're having the questions, you're talking to someone live, you can't use the same script. Like, what is a handout? What is a website? Those have a certain purpose and have a certain kind of flow to that thinking. You got to hook them so they pay attention. And the conversation, they've already committed to the meeting. At which point, you don't lead with what you deliver. You lead with trying to understand what they're trying to solve. And so, to Chris's point, if someone is already a few steps down the buyer's journey and they begin to really frame their understanding of the problem, respect that. The fact that they are actively seeking to solve a problem. And to Chris's point, they're probably frustrated with the choices that they have. Now, what's interesting when you're selling tech is that we often limit our understanding of the options that are available. So here's an example, basically. So you ask somebody, let's use a leasing agent example, because maybe everyone's been through this in the last couple of years. So, hey, let's imagine I sell leasing AI software. That's gonna, it's like an easy button. Find residents there, residents that pay on time and, always, and they're quiet. So if I got the solution, and I'm going to bring it to market. Make sure that I understand how to frame that in the context of the person that's buying the problem. And know that, hey, what are the other ways that you solve this problem? And it's probably not going to be other technology solutions. The other ways they solve the problem, well, we actually hired more people, right? We actually hired consultants to help us with this. And then we looked at technology. Technology is the third choice or the fourth choice in a list of options, almost always. And so there's room for you to ask questions about the other ways that they've solved it. And to what Chris is leading in on, if you find out the other ways they've solved it, that's also where you're going to find budget. Because if they're saying, I've got no budget for software, but I'm hiring 3 leasing
agents and I've got a leasing consultant on retainer, well, you have budget. You're just spending it a different way. And so let's think about the problem, the different alternatives that can be used to solve that, and then understand that that is the scope of what we're talking about with constraints. That's the amount of budget you have. That's the way the problem has been solved in the past. And those old ways are why the problem is frustrating. And maybe we can look at an alternate way of solving it. And I use the word alternate intentionally because it often could be the recommendation is, hey, have you thought of just vending that out? Right? Maybe you vend out turns to make readies to somebody who just does turns as a business. And that's actually the right recommendation versus, optimizing with some easy button within your internal environment. But we need to understand the reasons why they can't achieve their goals, not just that they're not achieving their goals. And then we can really help.
Chris, if you notice any comments,
right, look at it right now.
Or any questions at any given point, just flag
Got
out.
one right here. Looking for UX. Yeah. That's
It's 1 4.
No, keep going. Yeah, that's someone looking for work
Or someone is looking for
for a UX design job.
Okay. Got it. So, Guillermo, I wanted to ask you now, what are you finding to be the most misconception on our operator side when it comes to AI, right? Because I think this is the word of the day now.
Yeah.
Jimmy and a truck has become Jimmy and a truck AI. Like everybody, and I expect probably like over 50% of the companies that are they're on a trade show floor this week to have like AI at the end, or like have some sort of a pitch that includes AI, right? Because it sells, right? What it helps sells. But what is the biggest misconception on operator side when it comes to perceiving AI?
I'd say there's probably two pieces in that, that it's easy to implement, that you can turn it on, right? And that you don't have to do anything. Like, it's easy to turn on, and that maybe you have nothing to do with the outcome. So if you're going to buy AI, turn it on, and expect to have success, and that's all you're going to do.
So it's kind of like plug and play, and don't touch it, and it's just going to do
It'll
like
work that way.
perform a miracle for you.
What AI does, and this is a bit of a hard conversation, is it reveals the weaknesses in your organization.
And it amplifies them.
It amplifies them. So the best example I've got, and for everyone who needs a metaphor on this, if you've driven on an unbalanced tire at 20 miles an hour, you might not have noticed the tire was unbalanced. But the second you hit 55, 56, 58 miles an hour, the whole car is falling apart.
That's an excellent analogy.
That is the best way to explain what AI is going to do. AI is going to take your car that's running at 20 miles an hour and take it to 55, 65, 75, 100 miles an hour. And if your tire's not balanced, you're going to go off the road. You will be in the ditch. And so I will testify that it's a thing that's best done where you have confidence in the outcome, you understand the process, and you're looking to amplify and accelerate. If you've got speed wobble concerns, dial it down and use AI to improve the speed wobbles. Use AI to tune the tire prior to going to that higher speed. And so I really recommend that if you think you're ready for it, make sure you're sure, and ultimately understand that it is a amplifier and catalyst, and it will reveal the weaknesses in your organization. And for context, what do weaknesses usually look like? They usually look like three things: people, process, and your existing technology and data. Four things, and data. If you've got people that don't want to do it or are just disincentivized, you might find some saboteurs in your organization. If you've got a process that's ill-defined or poorly understood, you're going to be automating shit. If you have technology, like if you're trying to go from paper and pen to AI, you're going to have some gaps that you need to close. And then ultimately, if your data is not captured correctly or it's not in the right space, you're going to have complications in accelerating with AI. So now that sounds like, but everybody has those 4 problems all the time. What you can do is you can begin to make the problem smaller to where you have a higher degree of confidence in those 4 little aspects, and ultimately gain confidence in your ability to deploy it. And then work with the team that has deployed the technology before. Because I assure you at Venderoo, and I'll say my 25 years of deploying technology experience, it was never right the first time. We learned so much in the first go live, my first year, like years ago. And at Venderoo, we learned the same story. First 50 implementations were a heavy lift. But now we are constantly iterating on optimizing that deployment and implementation experience. So that would be my 2 biggest takeaways, is that understand this, it will reveal your weaknesses in your organization, and prepare for that so that you can make the problem smaller to be successful.
Here's what I'm hearing from executives all the time, right? We're known as an industry that's slow to adopt new technology, especially like AI. It's still like very new, right? It's like 3 years ago, AI was not around really, like to the public knowledge in a public arena, right? As a general conversation. And what they're saying is that we don't have enough information to make those decisions. Like, we don't know what to choose, what type of product, what type of what works with our existing stack. What do we do with this stack once we adopt AI? What type of AI? What should AI do? What's our level of involvement? So I think that leads to a very strong case to be made that the property companies aren't spending enough time to educate the buyer. And I will say this: it's kind of like there's 2 different situations. First of all, you have the situation with a very large operator, right? Top 50 management company, that most of those companies have a chief technology officer, right? That oversees technology. However, this person is not really like an AI expert. To my knowledge, most of the ones that I know, what I've seen, what I heard talking, they're experts in something else. Systems, hardware, other things, right? So they're looking at the overall tech stack, but they're not experts in AI. This could change, or probably some companies might have changed already, but as a general rule, that's not the case. So then, how do we, how do you actually educate that particular role to better understand what is that the direction they gotta take? And then you have the smaller companies, they can't afford to hire a chief technology officer. They don't even have that, and there's like various people in the organization going on their own trying to do research. Chief, CEO, the COO of the company, and a couple of others. They might have like a director of technology, but nothing that no one that's, I'll say, qualified as an expert in this technology. So in my mind, how can we expect them to embrace technology and actually make an educated decision in purchasing and adopting new technology if there's not enough information out there for them to kind of like to educate themselves and understand what they're buying and how that's going to work and affect their organization? So what's your take on that?
Pass to you, Chris.
Sorry, I'm messaging right now.
Oh.
We have another question. So I got
Okay.
We're done.
So as a vendor, it's part of our job. If you're not teaching, you're just talking, right? And so and unfortunately, even talkers sell deals too. So that just happens. There is a chance, and we call this testing your champion on the seller side, but that you should be skeptical as a buyer, and you should test your seller and ask questions, ask commitments that have solid data-driven outcomes and objectives. And there's nothing squirmier than a seller who's trying to tell you what they think might happen with your business. And so it's fair as a buyer to test your seller about the afters, what you're going to get after you do this, number one. And number two, ask them how they get there. So, example, we'll use the 40% reduction in open work orders that we do. The biggest gap closure we make when we make that happen is because we've got AI agents that work 24/7. There never is an off button. There never is an off call button. It's just on. It's not on or on call, or it's just on. And so when you take out weekends, you take out after hours, like you realize that, like, and this is our example, that we're only staffing for 1/4 of the uptime. So are we shocked that work orders are late? And so if we just close that 75% of that uptime with AI agents that love to work all the time, well, now it's not shocking that you close that now you have 40% less work orders. It's just not shocking. And so things like that is how we begin to articulate, okay, here's the outcome. Do you want less work orders? I'd love less work orders. Incredible. How about 40%? It's almost half. I'd love that. How do you do that? Well, we principally do it this way, 1, 2, 3. And how it looks like to you is that you have your maintenance organization never stops running. Never stops intaking, organizing, triaging, troubleshooting, all that stuff. How do you do that? We got agents that do that, and it all works, etc. And so that little napkin test has to kind of make sense in your head. And if this is something that, as sellers, we're always working on this. Chris coaches on this, is how to simplify our message. If we're talking in terms of this, that, and IOs and all sorts of stuff, we're making it overly complicated, because as a buyer, you should be comfortable enough with that solution that you can go as a champion and a buyer. You should be able to go to your internal leader and be the seller on our behalf. If we haven't taught you, like, heard your problem, attached your problem to how our solution solves it, and made it simple enough that you can walk away from that and explain that to somebody else, back to zero, back to go. Because we got to make it simple as sellers, because then we know we've done our job. So one of the qualification questions I've started asking, this is just recently, is, okay, at the 15 minutes to go mark, I asked the question, how are you going to say this to somebody else? And I wait for them to tell me what they heard. And if it's kind of offline a little bit, that gives me a chance to correct. And it also gives me a chance to learn about how I didn't make it simple to understand. That's that's how I approach the education piece. Because if you guys know me well enough, I do tend to overcomplicate. I do tend to think of things at the lowest level. And talking to folks like yourselves and having to repeat it over and over again just helped me find ways of explaining things in simpler terms.
To me, what you're doing is kind of like exercise for the brain, right? Like workout for the brain. And our conversations are that way. And you never are the person that like gets upset if I challenge you or ask the questions, because ultimately questions that I'm asking and everything, there are questions that most buyers will ask when it comes to your technology and your questions. I also believe that your answers are in your discovery calls. When you're looking at discovery calls and you read the transcripts and everything, your prospects will tell you in their own words.
100%.
And actually, you could craft your message based on those discovery calls.
Oh yeah,
and continuously improving it, right?
Yes.
Again, literally using the language. If that's the language they use, is the language that they also understand. And then instead forcing like a new category, I'm seeing this too, right? It's another trend to where companies in the space are making a play for creating a new category, like literally just taking new words or combination of words that are becoming their lingo, their like tagline. And look, go for it. Or keep walking, or other taglines, right? That everybody knows nowadays have billions or tens of billions of dollars behind them, making them famous, right? If you think that you have this type of funds to deploy to create your own language and get it adopted, good luck. Most companies don't.
And if you don't believe that, so I completely agree with you. And if you don't believe that, the question you ask is, what did you type into Google before this meeting? Because they didn't type in the seller's words. They typed in their words in because that's how they articulated the problem they're trying to solve. Because nobody, well, unless you've met somebody, Chris, I have not ever met a person who woke up in the morning and said, "Today is the day I get to buy technology."
Absolutely not.
I actually have.
You have?
Oh,
Okay, there you go.
I actually think about it that way. That I say, I'm going to make a decision today or this week on X technology. I absolutely do.
Well, so I meant to frame it in terms of like, they're going to think about it in terms of problem they got to solve first. Meaning,
and
I'm
they will
typing in
take
how
that
to-
technology just as a tool, not a just as a means to an end, right? Just as a tool, not just to buy, like, you shop for, I guess
walnuts.
everything. Yeah, or clothes, or something like that.
Is that what you mean, or do you mean people celebrate the fact they actually can go buy technology?
Both.
Okay.
So I think
Let's hear it.
I think I'm always cautious of like general statements because around that is because there are specific people whose job it is to only buy technology and to decide on and also cancel technology. So I think it's kind of like buying properties. If you're a buyer of properties, you are sometimes buying, you're sometimes selling. When you're buying technology, you're not just always buying, you're also getting rid of vendors and suppliers. So like when I was a buyer, I was on the buying side for about, for 7 years. And we went from buying $10 million worth of goods and suppliers to $210 million just through acquisitions and whatnot on the basis corporate. And every single time we added someone, we had to delete a vendor for the most part. We didn't want to keep adding more vendors and suppliers. And what would happen is a supplier would get bigger and bigger and bigger and more successful. They would start copying others or adding in new services and features because they knew that. The smart suppliers know to add more because there's only two ways to grow your business, right? It's to sell more to your existing customers or sell to new customers. That's it. Now you can talk about the products and services, but it's crazy to me. I mean, Guillermo, I am shocked. But by the way, I literally know people when I've had conversations about this in multifamily and real estate.
Yep.
People say, "Hey, I'm coming to you to solve this problem to X company we're already working with. Can you do this for us?" And then the company says no. The supplier says, "No, we won't do that." And they say, "But I'd love to give you the business. We have other suppliers, but I'd rather bring it to you to work with you." Right. Or, "Hey, could you partner up with this other supplier to maybe bring them in and or create a MCP or an integration, whatever you want to call it." Mm-hmm. I think the funniest thing is, how do I know that's real? This happens all the time. It's because it happened to us. 13 years ago, we had one product, lockers. Then a company called Amley Residential and Steve Halsey came to us and said, "Hey, Anne Maria Banks, who's now the president," and they said, we think you guys should build this product. We're not going to buy your lockers. We're going to buy something different. It's called a package room." And we said to them, "This isn't the right product for us. That would take too long, and we're not sure if that's actually going to work well in the market." And they said, "Well, we're not going to buy this. So if you don't build it, we'll probably have to build it ourselves or find someone else who will." And which meant, obviously, a different supplier. And they're not going to go with two suppliers. So they said, "If you build it, we will put it into all of our 97, 96 properties at the time, nationwide. And we will help you get it to market because we believe in this so much and it will save them so much money." The reason, though, Guillermo, we didn't want to put that in, this is the obvious thing that everyone will tell you is, or some won't, the CEOs won't tell you sometimes, but sometimes they will, is, it costs a lot less money for existing properties than our existing property. And so at the time, I think back to the point we were talking about, Adrian, about being upfront and honest with your customers, I think oftentimes too many people are trying to sell the more expensive thing. But in reality, what I always learned, the greatest lesson I learned, and I wish I had known it earlier, was come in with options and be open about which one's more expensive and why. Why does it cost more versus we're just upcharging? And so when we learned to do that at Luxor, we were like, "Hey, you're asking for this, but I'm going to show you Y and Z. here's why. There's 3 different types of buyers. So that goes back to, why are there people who specifically are looking for tech and why are there people who don't? Most people aren't looking for tech a lot of times. Because if you're a company that is developing new properties and you're holding for the long term, you're generally, I believe, more inclined to put more technology in and be an active buyer of technology, right? The largest players in the country, from Willow Bridge to Greystar, Avenue 5, the top 50 all have technology people. Peak Made, Price, the list can go on and on and on. Student Quarters, because they are active long-term holders. If you're just a developer, nothing against developers, but if you're a merchant, builder, you may not be as inclined to put more technology in because you're going to turn the property around in 6 months to a year.
You're not an operator, you're a builder.
Correct. Yeah. And you might be short-term operator, but you're going to turn around. And so I think it's the people who are thinking very long-term are willing to make that bet and spend that money. And those are people who have dedicated technology players. But again, going back to the fundamental piece, which is I don't offer this. I have 1 product today. In the future, you're going to have 3. Or I have 3 products today. In the future, you're going to have 7. I mean, Flock Safety is another one, right? They went from having 1 product to now like 7 or 8. Metropolis, right? The parking company. They've gone from having 1 to probably 5 solutions. And then I think about, every company is going to have more and more solutions as time goes by. Because, and I would call out Adrian, several of the large, lock manufacturing companies and smart access control. And why do they add more? Well, I think the danger in adding too many things is that you can't be great at everything. The reason they do it is because they already have the clients and it's easy for them to add it on and they keep getting asked for it. I think the challenge sometimes is some people who try to build everything internally. This is the question around build versus buy versus partner. Is I think a lot more companies should be partnering rather than trying to build it. And, because especially when you get into liability, SOC compliance, personal data, and if you can set up all the AI, innovations, integrations, MCP that you want, but if you don't have the right security protocols, you're opening yourself up to a bad story in an industry that really cares about, consistency and about de-risking. So hopefully that helps.
I heard a funny story talking to a director of technology that built their own AI agent for triage and intake, right? And I asked him, so how's it going? He says, this is going great. We love this thing. We kicked ass. Our team did a great job. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. Congratulations. Again, to kind of learning a little bit about how things were going before they kicked it off.
Yeah.
And, what did you have before? Well, we had a call service. With a call service, how did that work? Well, if something happened on the weekend, it went to the call service and they created a work order and it did its thing and was waiting for us on Monday. Okay. So what do you have now? Well, we've got an AI agent that answers it and does the thing and creates a work order on Monday. I said, oh, that's great. Wonderful. So when the call service stopped working, what happened? So, oh, well, they escalated internally and they take care of the problem. Then they'd send me a note about it on Monday, or maybe I'd never find out. But what happens now? Well, if something goes wrong, I find out about it and then I've got to deal with it. And I said, so you used to have a problem that you didn't have to worry about it in the weekends, and now you have to manage that problem? She said, I never really thought about it that way before. I go, so now you've gone from not having to manage the problem to having to manage and own the problem that you didn't, and you're more expensive than the call service. Yes. How's that going to work in the long run? And so we kind of got a little longer conversation about it, but it can be there's total cost of ownership and there's total cost of distraction. And it can be a distraction to hire more people to solve a problem that is cheaper. Now, the other example goes back to the kind of the Linux software database days of free open source database software, which is, it was a thing 15 years ago. And you ended up, instead of buying and solving the problem, you ended up hiring a solution to the problem, meaning you had people now that were staffed to solve that problem because the licensing was free. So just, I don't know, that would be make sure you understand what it costs to solve a software, to run software, and it's probably going to be cheaper. We're definitely, as vendors and sellers, we're definitely going to take the time to make sure you're educated about the alternatives that are out there. At least a good seller should. And then, and unless you want the headache and you want to compete, like in the tech space, it might be worth sticking to property management.
So I wanna wrap up with some final thoughts from each of you. And Chris, I'm gonna go to you. What are the essential questions that most people are missing when it comes to technology? What are the essential questions to you? Or the essential topics that they're not touching on, they're not going deep enough, they're staying too surface level, and therefore they're missing some incredible opportunity.
So I think someone asked earlier,
By the way, do we have questions from the audience?
Yeah, I was going to do one right now. So
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that.
Just sorry for that. I'm sorry. I'll look in 1 second. Let me see here. So one was about, will AI replace salespeople? And I think that one is a deep question.
That's
Yes.
a great question, and
Yes.
both of you having extensive experience in sales, I want to get your take. Take all the time that you need, because we don't have to, really wrap top of the hour. But this is incredible. This is a very good question.
I mean, like all AI will replace the transactional salespeople, 100%. So if you're just taking orders, AI replace the order takers, 100%. Will AI replace the B2B enterprise salespeople? I don't think ever, because like people problems need to be solved by people, and we need to be understood by people, and that's why enterprise sales it might even be the last thing to get taken over by AI. But here's what's interesting: is that like enterprise sales folks are using AI.
Explain why is it difficult for AI to do that, to take over the enterprise sales positions?
Because enterprise sales is about enabling change in an organization in exchange for dollars. And enabling change has so many different angles to it that need to be heard and listened to. I think to Chris's point, how he opened the conversation, because enterprise sales is about listening. And I don't know, I've started up Claude before, and it didn't start listening to me until I started talking to it. And so, like, I would say that enterprise sales is the way to go. So the answer is straight yes, it will replace order takers 100%. And it already is. Like, look at what's going on at Salesforce. Salesforce is replacing a lot of their sales staff because they're going to go straight with for all the just buy it stuff. That's all going to get replaced by AI, 100%.
So, Chris, what's your take on that question? What's your answer there?
So it's a combination of AI will make sales agents and teams better. So I think you're going to see, people have said, sales agents eventually will have $1 million quotas and will make $500,000 or $300,000, as BDRs. I disagree. I think it'll be even higher. I think people are going to start having, because people already do, and I think that's a kind of a vague statement because you don't know. It varies based on what people are selling. So when you're selling something that costs $10,000 versus selling something that costs $100,000 versus costs $1 million each. Contract value. I mean, sometimes in multifamily and real estate, contract values can be tens of millions of dollars, right? They can even be even more than that, obviously, if you're getting into construction in loans. So I think it's more about how you're using it, and then how relationship driven is the business you're focused on. That's the real question, because AI can help you to do so many things around process, around writing emails, creating systems. I think the biggest piece is it helps. If you think about what most salespeople were spending their time on was prospecting. Now AI helps you prospect everything. Pulls from different systems. It can pull from Apollo, pull from your Salesforce, your other CRM. It can pull events. I mean, quite honestly, the outreach isn't the differentiator. Anyone can outreach. Everyone is outreaching. So it's more about the storytelling and then the understanding of your customer, right? So I think the automations where like, sorry, lost my train of thought there. So if you think about the automation as a person trying to outreach, let's start with someone trying to outreach prep for an event, where they're going to meet with someone. They say, okay, I'm going to meet you. Sending an email that's personalized and clear. If you're using AI and have the ability to have AI help you prompt that, that's great. Number two is, can you connect the dots? Can you ask the right questions to, be a human and gain trust? It differentiates you from 95% of the other emails that are outbound out there. I'll give you an example for this event. I know some people are probably getting 400, 800, 1,000 emails, and they're getting emails from the same companies. By the way, they're getting emails from companies they already do business with. And that is a problem for AI that the humans can solve. So I think sales, you're going to see more sales be influenced by humans more than ever, because people aren't trusting AI. AI has a massive gap around trust, and humans are the people that can change that. So, why are we going to NAA? We're not going there just to have a nice Michelin dinner, Janet's Beard award-winning dinner in a couple nights. We're going out to meet people in person, because just having a Zoom isn't the same. Yeah. And being in the room where it happens, and also, by the way, when you're on Zoom, because you have the AI note readers, not everyone's totally free and open, candid. When you're together having a coffee, when you're together with an owner, they're able to share with you candidly the problems. Candidly, they're about to sell their company, right? Last week we were together, and people had sold their company for insane amounts of money. And that's what I think AI is going to allow more people to do, is to focus more. And that's why Adrian Danila is a good example, right? We're able to have 2 to 4 meals a month because look at that. We're now in Mississippi.
That's an historical moment for Guillermo.
The first time Mississippi.
Love it.
He steps foot, metaphorically speaking, into Mississippi for the first time. So
Yeah.
I hope it's a great experience, even if it's like from the windshield, right?
Interstate.
Kind of like window shopping of Mississippi.
Thrilled to be here.
100%.
I think to your point, Chris, to kind of like, people are gonna. I just love where you're going there. Like, if you're at New Orleans this weekend, you can order food at McDonald's, and it's automated, because the average contract value there is going to be $15. But if you go to a Michelin restaurant, you're going to talk to a waiter, and the waiter's going to find out your allergies. They're going to find out what you like. They're going to find out all of what you prefer: spicy, not spicy, tomatoey, biscuity, creamy, shellfishy, ratatouille. All that stuff.
Personalized experience.
And so that server, that waiter, is a professional waiter, and they're going to they're going to help you enjoy spending your money. Whereas if you're going to go to McDonald's, you're also what you're buying. You're buying a commodity item, and that should be AI. Like, why do I have to have someone tell me how where the egg was from in the McMuffin? I don't care. I want the McMuffin. Let's go.
Nobody cares.
And so I just need a button for that. And so the automation is going to emerge and replace. And so yes, like, let's take a McDonald's for example, a highly operationally excellent company. Did you know that in many of the drive-thrus you go through at McDonald's, that drive-thru person you're talking to isn't in the building?
Yeah.
They're offshore.
It's incredible, right?
Right? They're offshore listening to you, because it takes time. It's, as we were talking earlier.
How long until it's AI that does that?
Well, I'm sure that's the path forward. It's going to be AI, right? So, like, to outsource before you automate, right? Yeah. So, like, that's how that's going to happen, because they realize that if someone's serving a customer, getting interrupted taking an order can be very distracting. And does the customer even know? Not at all, because there's a break. So, yes, it's going to replace salespeople for sure. Yes, it's going to improve the way salespeople interact with prospect for sure. Yes, we're going to see a different experience for the different size of contract values. 100%. So I'm again, like, well, it's pretty hard to find a thing I'm not bullish about. I am bullish that people will get paid more when they're using AI.
No, qualified people will get paid.
Qualified people get paid more.
And
Thank you very much.
the less qualified, I think,
Those jobs can go away, just like the
will
McDonald's,
go away.
just like the McDonald's order taker. So I get pretty fired up when I read about all the job losses that are going to happen about AI and kind of all the topics that everyone's talking about. And I openly agree that there's going to be an economic shift for less jobs at higher wages. And that, I think that we are actually at an opportunity here in multifamily where the wages are actually unacceptably low in many paths.
Today, and continue, please, because I have to add something.
I think it's unacceptably low for the work that's being done because there's no money to pay for it. Because they're running inefficient operations. If you're running paper and pencil, that's going to be an expensive way to run things. And the person that bears the brunt of that is the person who's collecting the wage salary. So my bullish perspective, where I'm optimistic, is that companies, and we've seen this within our customer base, is that people that are deploying AI are getting paid more than they were before.
And by the way, mentioning that it's unacceptably low. Guess what? Facebook, Meta, just announced that they're building an apprenticeship program for people that want to learn trades. They want to become maintenance technicians for their humongous data centers. They're putting them to all included pay for. They pay people to learn the trade and become technicians at their data centers. Now, why is that important for multifamily? Well, we've been running short of maintenance talent for decades. For all the time that I've been in 23 years, we've been running shorter and shorter. Now, we also have to face this incredibly powerful and resourceful companies. They're not going to fight over, are we gonna pay a technician like $21 an hour or 22? They're like, no, we gotta start at $45. And by the way, we'll give you all the training, pay training. How do you think that we're gonna be standing a chance if we're not taking this situation very, very seriously and just do something about it? Chris, any other questions out there?
Yeah, there's one other one here. Give me 1 second. There it is. The other one is Stephanie Ortiz gives a quick shout out. Not a reality TV, but I'm so in for this. All right. The other question was around AEs and sailing teams. Prospects stall, watching demos completed, but how can you reduce the stall time between making a decision in sales to getting someone to close, especially in this time of AI? How do you reduce that time from first meeting, decision, through the pipeline, through the funnel? I have thoughts, but what do you guys think?
I can't wait to answer the question.
I'll go. That's an amazing question. And was it Stephanie?
No, this one is actually from Kyle Nadu.
Kyle, shout out to you.
Great question.
Incredible question, right? So here's what I'm thinking. Look for individuals that can compress your sales cycle. I think over and over again, companies are trying the same old methods of deploying, a bunch of, a sales army that sometimes does not bear better results, does not bring better results. But where you should find, where you should look for better results? I think, how about trying things differently? How about having a go-to-market strategy, a different strategy for go-to-market, or even with sales? There's a lot of people that have a very significant word to say. Their words carry a lot of weight, right? I think we could say, for the sake of argument, influencers in the industry, people that have an incredible reputation in operations and in other areas of multifamily that have seen a lot, have done a lot. How about associating your company with people, individuals like that, to basically what's happening when you do that? So they lend some of their some of their credibility to your team, to your brand, when you do that. And what that does, it compresses the sales cycle in most cases, and it could reduce your acquisition cost, your CAC. Uh, those are the two very important things. But only if it's done right. Because if you just gonna hire an influencer, a person that could, advise various management companies to consider your product, and then your sales team and your onboarding team are not on point with everything else, or let's just be honest, your product sucks, right? There's no there's no army, or like there's no influencer in the world that can pull magic for you, right? So have a great product first, have a mature product. Be very honest about what your product breaks, what your product doesn't do, or what your product is not for. For example, there's great products that might work conventional multifamily. They're not gonna be for student housing. They're not gonna be for senior living. There's so many differences and nuances. There are products that work for A plus assets. They might not work for B or C assets. But I think these are the few things that I will mention out here. And Guillermo, I'm passing around to you.
What was told to me a while back is that the seller's urgency is not the buyer's urgency. Meaning your deadline is not my deadline. So urgency is a point of view and a perspective. And so the thing about urgency, and Joe Summers and I talked about this maybe even last year, is that urgency is something that you capture, you don't create. And how do you capture it? By asking questions. Because there's one thing I also know for sure was taught to me as well, was that if I tell you it's time to hurry up, you're going to hurry up when you want to hurry up. But if you tell me I got to hurry up, I know it's time to hurry up. And so it's all about asking the questions and being comfortable with the silence of, well, what are you going to do if you don't do anything? Because you forget the reason why the deal's taking so long is because the status quo is tolerable. They're not frustrated. They're just enduring the pain. And seeking pain points is a way that we often misunderstand people's motivation for change. Because just because it's painful, we all have a thing in our life that's painful that we tolerate. A broken window, an unpainted step, all sorts of things. We just don't get to it. But it is a pain, but it's not frustrating. And so my urgency is not your urgency. If I tell you to hurry up, that's different than you telling you to hurry up. And to Chris's point, the key words you got to ask somebody to qualify them where they are in that funnel, what have you tried? If you don't ask them that, and they're not afraid, and you're afraid to hear the answer, you're never going to catch urgency. You're just going to move a deal up funnel and tell everybody that it's going to be a forecast. But if they can't actually tell you why they can't, what happens if they don't solve the problem?
Yeah,
you're not going anywhere.
I think you just hit on a hot piece that I think is one of the most important things in sales and relationships as well. Is I have this problem sometimes too. Is we all have, I would say many people at certain times have urgency and others don't. And when you're trying to be urgent, like, we're in a car, you're trying to move fast, right? But you have to be careful about trying to go too fast, especially in business. There's a time to go fast on certain things and tasks. There's a time not to. And sometimes going too fast in a deal kills the deal, number one. Number two, you don't, like you said, the urgency on one side isn't always the same, and the trust on one side of the relationship is not always the same. And what I've noticed about people is sometimes they are, I've learned there's givers and takers in these transactions and relationships. And so I learned from Sam Zell, he said, he always tried, whenever he made a deal with someone, he always wanted to leave more meat on the bone for the other side. That's a great thing I've taken away, because I think the greatest mistake I've ever seen is people who try to negotiate every penny, every little thing, put up a wall.
That right there hits so deep, Chris. Sorry, continue.
They cause, I've seen tens of millions and even more, $40 to $50 million of market value eroded from companies that I've seen personally by companies who treated their previous employees or contractors or advisors poorly. And, sadly, I've always learned you want to leave every relationship well, right? So you don't get into an accident or a crash of that company. I think when I'm thinking about a person at the helm who is almost a greedy relationship with other partners, right? Or even employees within the internal company. So hands down to a salesperson, but even a person who is trying to, I look at salespeople also as people who are just trying to create partnerships and relationships. If you're a management company, right? Whether you're a third-party management company like Willow Bridge or Apple 5 or Graystar at this conference or RPM, you're a buyer, but you're also a seller to owners. And so everyone's trying to sell something. And I think I had a conversation, I won't mention who, but many people know her. She's speaking at this conference, but we had a great conversation around how you treat people. And I think it's, people say, oh, suppliers treat me like this. And they put themselves on the pedestal sometimes. And I think oftentimes I'm actually about to put out a post about gratitude on LinkedIn. And I think one of the things that too many people forget, they forget where they came from. Adrian, we were talking about this email where I got an email where someone said to me, oh, Chris, I don't think this is a good time for vendors to meet up. And we hadn't talked in years. And it was funny because I, am now having sold our company and now being in the ownership side, I get asked a lot about management companies. But it was very funny because they thought I was selling them a product or something like that. And at the end of the day, like, many of the owners and managers treat their vendor partners, or even yell at them or disrespect them. And I think it's really important they treat them well. And you never know, right? And at the end of the day, companies are only as good as their suppliers. So the best operators I've seen, I know 2 this week that are hosting happy hours, owners and operators that are hosting happy hours for their suppliers.
Want to give a shout out? Call them out?
What's that?
You want to call them out, the names by name?
I won't, because then they'll get hit up because the people are going to ask them to go to their happy hour. They do it every year, which is phenomenal. Most people know who these 2 companies are.
Fair enough.
But at the end of the day, like, you want to treat people well. And I think oftentimes, there's also a challenge around, there's only so much money to go around, but at the same time, you need to make sure you're not being penny smart and pound foolish. See, way too many people worrying about pennies when they should be thinking about dollars and millions of dollars. So, I think also people try to move quickly. That's great. I try to tell people, hey, I may not want to be open with you. I may not be able to move on that up front. I tell people the expectations up front. And then I think people need to respond, even with not right now, or come back to me in 2 months, or I'm the wrong person, or this is just not a fit. We just made a decision on this. Those are some of the responses that AI can help with. And I actually use AI for that purpose of responsiveness. So, but yeah, being more human. That's why we do our dinners. That's why we go to these events. That's why I love getting in person because, I learned from, here's who I will shout out. Chris Krebs spoke at the RETSI Summit in Miami a few months ago. Chris Krebs is the former head of AI and cybersecurity for the U.S. government. And this is my mic drop. Chris Krebs, you can't really know someone. He shared a lot of things in the room over an hour and a half that I could not believe, and I can't share here. But I will say this, is he said, with AI now, he doesn't even trust. People say this is the future. It's now. He doesn't even trust his own partner sometimes emails. He will text them and say, let's go meet up for coffee if they say something weird. And you can't stop hacks anymore. People think, oh, I'm not going to get hacked. No. Anybody can now get hacked with AI. The question is how you're going to deal with it. Any company can and will potentially be hacked, and you won't even know. But how are you going to move forward? The same thing with those relationships with people. How are you going to work with those people when something goes wrong? How are you going to turn that around in that relationship and earn that trust back? So that's my mic drop in there.
I think that the thing to take away, and thank you for bringing that up, Chris, is that for everyone we talk about sales here, if you're not selling, you're always going to work for someone that is. And this goes for everyone in the internal organizations. So if you think that you're a maintenance director, if you're a maintenance supervisor, you are still also in a sales role. And I don't necessarily mean just for the residents in your building. I also mean that to your asset manager, to the client side, you're also in the sales building. So if you want to get an idea or change through, the things we just described around understanding who writes a check, who's motivated for change, things we talked about in terms of like asking the right questions, understanding the timing, all of those things are imperative to consider when you're thinking about your own career growth. Because the person who's always right is never fun to be around, but the person who's always there to help is always incredible to have with you on your journey. And so like the things that Chris and I and Adrian are chatting about, they are for everyone. If you are looking to see development in your career and you want to change ideas or you want to implement change, there is more selling that happens inside the organization than outside the organization. And those that understand and embrace that have careers that launch past other people because they're seeking to understand what their leaders, their buyers, are looking to achieve. And then they align themselves with what their buyers, their leaders are seeking to achieve, and they help them hit their goals. It doesn't matter if you're selling externally or if you're selling internally. If you're a human being and you figure out a goal of another human being and you help them out, there is a natural exchange of value that occurs and that happens forever and ever and ever. And as you get more and more practiced at it, you'll find that is a way easier way to live your life than trying to convince people to do something they don't want to do. So my shout is to everybody internally who maybe heard us talk a lot about sales, who maybe shut off or didn't think this is important to you. This is the most important conversation that you might have. When you consider about going to NAA right now, and you're talking to your leaders, or you're preparing a post-conference report, consider what your leaders are seeking to achieve and seek to help them solve their goals. And you will find that it's a slipstream to where your career is going to go because you're thinking about how you serve other people. That took me 30 years to figure out, so I hope that somebody listens to that and doesn't repeat the mistakes that I made.
Chris, any other questions from the audience?
No, let me just double check. Let me refresh one more time. That's what. Give me 1 second to just disconnect.
I got it right here. Yeah. Nothing new on my feed here.
Well, we appreciate you all for being with us, joining us on this marathon conversation. Just got to say that this was just a fraction of what we've been doing since 7 a.m. Eastern time this morning. That's all we've been doing. And we're still not getting close to wrapping it up. We don't have a. Someone asked me if I have a playlist. Who's gonna order the music? My reply was that I'm afraid the 7-hour drive is not gonna be enough time for us to cover everything that we have to say. And it seems like I'm right. We're a little over an hour to making it to New Orleans, and still a lot to talk about. But thank you all again for joining us. Incredible to have you along for the journey. It's been an incredible experience for us having you and with us in a car right here, even though it was virtually. And I promise that on the next conference, I'm going to figure out how to rent a SUV larger or a bus so we could do this at scale, so we could scale this experience in person and broadcast the whole entire trip live. It's going to be epic. If you're going to New Orleans, just come see us, come say hi. If you're not going to New Orleans, let's connect after the conference. I'll share some thoughts. We also on our way back, we're gonna have some thoughts about how the week went, and hopefully that'll be helpful to you. Have a great afternoon or morning if it's still morning where you're at, and see you on the next one. Take care.
Everyone. Cheers.